session. First, I request approval. Silence, please. For approval of the minutes of the sessions held on April 20 and 23, 2026. These minutes have previously been made available to the members of this committee, so if the committee agrees, they can be approved by assent. Then it is approved. Appearance of the former Director of Portfolio Companies of the State Industrial Holdings Company, SEPI, responsible for overseeing Air Europa and Plus Ultra, Mr. Miguel Angel Perez, to provide information regarding the purpose of the committee. Mr. Jose Angel Parte Arroyo. Martin appears before this investigative committee created pursuant to a resolution adopted by the full Senate, adopted on January 15, 2026. The purpose of this committee is to investigate and, if applicable, determine the existence of political responsibilities arising from the actions carried out by the State Industrial Holdings Company, SEPI, from May 2018 to the present. 18 hasta la actualidad. With special attention to the processes of granting aid, subsidies, public shareholdings, business bailouts, and other financial support instruments managed directly or indirectly by that entity. Your appearance takes place in compliance with the Commission's work plan and in accordance with the provisions of Organic Law 5, 1984 of May 24. May, regarding appearances before Congressional, Senate, or Joint Investigation Committees. In accordance with that law and under the terms of the summons that was notified to you, this Commission has required your appearance to inform it regarding the subject of the parliamentary investigation, with the witness being subject to the obligation derived from Article 502.3 of the Penal Code not to lie in their testimony. This does not affect the witness's constitutional rights. Likewise, you have been informed, in accordance with what is established in that law, of the possibility of appearing accompanied by a person to assist you. Regarding the development of the hearing, what is considered public, according to the provisions of Articles 75.1 and 190 of the Senate regulations, the person appearing will answer the questions posed by the spokespersons of the parliamentary groups. We will begin with the questioning. The floor is given on behalf of the opposing group to Senator Suarez de la Mata, from the Popular Parliamentary Group in the Senate. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Welcome, Mr. Pastor Parterolo, to this committee. And it is worth beginning by recalling something essential. This is not a committee to determine criminal responsibilities, but rather political responsibilities. But the fact that it is not criminal does not mean it is irrelevant, let alone optional. There is a legal obligation to respond and a democratic obligation to cooperate. It is not a courtesy, therefore, it is a duty. And I'm telling you this with complete clarity from the very beginning. 3 people have already appeared before this committee. The President of SEPI, Ms. Hualda, Mr. Lora, and Minister Montero. And we have found contradictions in their evasive statements and issues that objectively do not hold up. To put it directly for us, it is the way to see that my parliamentary group has not told the truth. That is why, Madam President, I request that on the day the report is drawn up, when appropriate, you take into account all these actions and what is stipulated in Article 502.3 of the Penal Code, because in the end, the truth will come out. SEPI is clearly not cooperating and hasn't given us any information. But thanks to judicial investigations, thanks to police investigations, and above all, thanks to the Constitution, above all, thanks to journalistic investigations, we are reconstructing what happened with considerable accuracy. Mr. Miguel Angel Perez, today you have a very clear choice. Either you help clarify the facts of this important moment, or you put yourself in the same position as those who came before you and chose to hide the information. I'll share something from my experience and what I've seen in another commission. Those who protect each other, who stay silent or coordinate their stories, there comes a time when they can no longer protect themselves. And from other experience, we've learned that support is volatile and that everyone ends up answering for their own actions. I'm certain that the truth will prevail in this commission. And now I'll proceed to ask you. Look, a lot has been written about the procedure. I'm interested in knowing at what stage of the Phase 8 procedure you were involved as the Director of Portfolio Companies until Ms. Owaza took office. If I may, I'm not sure if you can hear me. What was the other one? Hualda.
If I may, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Thank you very much, sir. Just before answering your question, I'd like to make a clarification because in the notice I appear as the person responsible for monitoring Plus Ultra and Air Europa. And I didn't formally have that responsibility. I was simply a member of the monitoring committee. As for my participation in the procedures related to the phase operations, yes. Let me point out that the assigned role was the technical coordination of the work teams formed in SEPI in relation to the advisors. It was assigned to the 4 directors of portfolio companies. The operations were distributed among the 4 directors of portfolio companies. I was assigned the Europa operation, then Plus Ultra, also Avaris, and finally Otusa. These are the only 4 operations in which I was fully involved in granting because the other directors of subsidiaries handled the rest of the operations. Regarding the procedure, it initially started with the request from the company itself. And what was done was to form a working team at SEPI with each of SEPI's support departments. To analyze the request, the documentation, if I'm going on too long briefly, the request was analyzed along with all the documentation. The company's documentation after full analysis, no.
The procedure, Mr. Partaro, I know it, but I asked you where you participated. Look, the Court of Auditors did an analysis and there's a flow chart. You appear in 2 phases, in the reception of the request, check, and then in the initial stage in the subsidiaries directorate. That is, in the reception of the request, you already played a decisive role. It's true that there were other operators involved, but in the end, you had a significant role in admitting the request. And your role is not minor in the investigation phase, which is why I was asking you, because in the end, it was your responsibility by the subsidiaries directorate to prepare the draft conclusions, the draft resolution proposal, and the draft document. That is what was submitted to the Advisory Council of FAS, which in turn submitted it to the Council of Ministers. Is that correct?
I'll explain, because I've seen the flowchart in the report from the Court of Auditors, and in the initial operations that were processed, that flowchart wasn't followed, okay? Which is in the flowchart, because in the end, I'll explain what I did and what I saw. In the end, they assigned us, no.
No, I understand, and I know what you're talking about. Then, the report from the Court of Auditors, let it be recorded in the minutes, honorable members, contains a major error, as I already stated in my previous intervention. Very well, the deadline in the terms of reference for the external advisors to issue a report was 4 weeks. However, the average was 158 days. Applying penalty clauses to you, anyone would be unaware. No.
I know about the 4 operations that I handled and what I coordinated, and in none of them do I think I know.
It was only fulfilled in one, in Europa. Interestingly, only the deadline set by the external advisors was met in Europa. It's very curious. Look, Ms. Gualda, Mr. Lora, and Mr. Montero, all 3 of them confirmed it, and they did so repeatedly. They stated that all the reports, all of them, both the reports from the external advisors and the internal ones, were favorable reports in which they said that the eligibility conditions were met. And on the other hand, the viability plan was correct. Do you stand by those points, or do you have any qualifications?
Qualifications? How did it go in the operations I managed? In the Europa operation, the framework agreement for financial and legal advisors was not yet in effect because it had been put out to tender in September. So there was no possibility to use that framework, so it was decided that a report had to be made by each of SEPI's support departments. So each department prepared their reports, and they were signed by each of the department heads. And the management board decided that additionally a report from a 3rd independent expert was necessary, as well as legal advice for the contracts from a law firm.
Yeah, afterwards.
And later on, when the framework agreement for financial advisors and legal advisors was already in force for the transactions, the ones I handled for Plus Ultra and Avaris, it was said that it wasn't necessary since there were reports from the internal departments, and that was enough. With the strategic reports, with the report from the external legal and financial advisor.
I appreciate your answer because it shows that the previous 3 who appeared before this committee have lied. So not all the files had the reports. I remind Mr. Lora when he spoke about that so-called 4 eyes principle, reports from external advisors, and it's clear that the truth wasn't told either. Thank you very much. Look, during the proceedings, I asked Mr. Laura and he couldn't answer me. What is a report that isn't signed? It appears in the flowchart. In other words, I'll rephrase the question. The proposals were modified. You are involved in the Plus Ultra file. And the question is whether the proposals from the external consultants' reports were modified. And they didn't match SEPI's interest because, of course, as far as I know, the document was sent unsigned. And if something didn't sit right with SEPI, it would go back to the advisors and the reports would be redone. Can you tell me if that's true? No, it didn't work like that.
That's true. The thing is that the management board at a certain point wanted to see the status of the analysis of the operations. So the management board was informed about the status and the external advisors were asked to send the draft of the report in whatever state or stage their analysis was at. And that draft report was the one that was made available to the board. The management board was informed about how the operation was progressing. They were just simple status drafts. It's not like they changed later. Very well.
Did Mr. Lores give you instructions to specifically push any of the operations you were involved in? No.
The only two considerations that were made were regarding the Air Europa operation, which was pushed forward due to the possibility of bankruptcy. Well, due to the company's possible default, since there was a lot of pressure from the shareholders and from the need to pay the payroll. And later, since a lot of time passed between the approval of the Air Europa operation and that new operations would be submitted or that the analysis of new operations would have been completed. Yes, they said operations needed to speed up since it had been a while without approvals.
New ones. Right, what happened, Mr. Parte Arroyo, is that the one that was prioritized was Europe, Air Europa. 3,000 jobs, that's a lot of jobs. But look, Celsa had 25,000 jobs, and their case took 2.5 years to resolve. No.
No, I don't know that one.
You don't know it, but I'm telling you they took 2.5 years to resolve a case that affected 25,000 workers. In other words, the priorities in this government, well, I'll move on to another matter. The UCO investigation, not my words, about Vicente Fernandez shows that he was still influencing SEPI. He was getting paid to organize meetings at SEPI. We've seen it published and in some reports. Have you in fact appeared in any report, one of those news stories? As one of the people who went to number 36 on Diego de Leon Street, have you been to that apartment? No. Never. Did you have any conversations with Mr. Fernandez between October 2019 and March 2021?
Well, I had talks since he got out.
Since he got out?
I just had purely cordial dealings with him. I mean, some contact of...
We shared messages in the famous management team's WhatsApp group. You were part of that group, right?
I was in the WhatsApp group.
So you saw what was being written.
It was information from the pandemic period, some congratulatory messages. It was a chat for news and updates and so on.
Very well. Did you delete WhatsApp? I assume you removed it from your corporate phone after leaving SEPI? Yes, of course. Did you remove WhatsApp from your personal phone?
No, well, but no, I still have the same phone number I had. No.
Well, I'm asking you about WhatsApp messages. You know that Mr. Fernandez has deleted them. Many of those who have appeared before other investigation committees have had that habit. People usually delete things because they don't want others to know what's there. Look, as I was saying, the information places you in the scheme, along with, I recently read in a media outlet, Vicente Fernandez, the organizer, meetings with his clients to obtain European funds in exchange for 5,000 euros. They place you alongside Mr. Nova. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
And I ask you, it's a serious enough statement that, if it's not true, she should file a lawsuit against the media outlet or deny it. If I were in her shoes and it wasn't true, I wouldn't waste a second. Do you think she should file a lawsuit against that media outlet, or has she already done so?
There was a story about me in OK Diario in which I exercised my rights. No?
I'm not referring to anything. No.
I know you're referring to the news that came out this morning. A story about me came out in OK Diario. I exercised my right to rectification. The story was corrected by OK Diario, although they didn't publish the full content. And well, I'll have to get legal advice to see how to proceed, of course.
You're being accused of a crime. Not sure if you know.
Yes.
Look, Europa, can you explain to me why it only took 60 days to process that file? Because so far, no one has been able to explain it.
I think the whole team, the whole SEPI team, it was the first operation. And no,
But there were others already in line. I mean, the first three just happened to be Europa, Plus Ultra, and Duro Felguera. The three that have had the most difficulties in the rescue fund, the FASE, the ones that pose the most legal problems, yes.
Europa had all the documentation ready.
That's where I wanted to get to, yes.
All the documentation, and well, I think it came from their previous analysis of the ICO, because all the information they gave us was practically the same as what they had.
Read the idea that Europa is the only one of all those who submitted an application that didn't have to correct the documentation while everyone else made mistakes, given the complexity and difficulty of the documentation that had to be submitted.
I don't remember exactly if there was any request for correction or not.
They correct because they reformulate the table of 475, but coincidentally, it didn't have a single problem. That request, unlike all the others that have been processed, which had to provide additional documents and reformulate the request, they're coincidences.
I already know
Coincidences. You've already told me there was no instruction to speed things up. So far, the three who have appeared, I get the feeling that everything that has happened at SEPI has nothing to do with what we read in the media. I'm referring to Europa, Dama, Abalos, Holdo, Hidalgo. Are you also one of those who thinks that all the WhatsApp messages we're reading, all the information that the UCO is obtaining, is like a capsule that has nothing to do with what happened at SEPI? You think that too? That there was no ability to influence?
My role at SEPI was technical, I'm not sure.
No, but well, I'm a politician.
And neither.
I don't think so, Mr. Miguel Angel Perez, but in the end, the one who submitted the final proposal was you with Mr. Laura. No, and you, Mr. Laura. No, but you are there in that spotlight. You knew all the files perfectly well and you were involved in all that information because, look, do you know what happened? What happened? Mr. Hidalgo, I'm not going to tell you what he did in the other committee, but in the end, the prosecutor understood, and that's why he charged him with the crime of bribery. In his report, that if Mr. Hidalgo paid the gentleman, Mr. Aldama paid for Tesa's vacation, for Mr. Gatesa, Mr. Abalos. He negotiates and pulls strings so that there is an informational note on August 9, which Air Europa needed to strengthen its position. At that time, I remind you that they were in a merger or in a process with Iberia. Of course, the prosecutor rightly says, of course, here they got the note, so it's possible that there is a bribery offense. And the question is, who wrote the note that came out of SEPI? Well, actually, not from SEPI. Mr. Laura admitted that he had participated in that note issued by Mr. Saura. Did you participate in issuing that note? No, you don't know the content.
You're talking about the note in the press.
The press release, no, of course, but the press release clearly strengthens its position in the negotiation, because if the company was worth 1.3 billion and at that moment it drops to 500 million, lack of liquidity or facing difficulties makes selling your company problematic. If they already know they're going to help you, your company's value recovers, which is what happened to you.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about because I'm not in that field.
Of course. Very well. As I said, I see that you also think there was a plot and that it didn't have the ability to influence. But in the end, Mr. Abalos says, I'm going to go to jail for covering up Begonia's scandal with Air Europa. What scandal was Mr. Abalos referring to? I know, no, excuse me, but I don't have Abalos.
I don't know him.
I don't think you have to be very smart to understand what happened there. Because look, when in an administrative file, the word prison and the word scandal appear, it stops being an administrative file. Administrative file, that's something else. You want to see it or you don't want to see it, but obviously SEPI had to be involved. I'm not saying an accomplice in the sense of the penal code, but rather speeding up procedures, because otherwise nobody here understands anything. A 40 million distribution charged to reserves without having the accounts prepared. The last disbursement takes place on August 7th. The press release comes out on August 8th. Subsequently, on August 20th, Air Europa's bailout application is made and a bonus is distributed, which, according to the FAS conditions, is prohibited on November 15th, amounting to 3 million. That is 40 million on one hand and 3 million for 3 top executives of Europa on the other. Don't you think so? Mr. Laura told us it was legal. Do you think this action is moral? That is, when you're requesting public funds from all Spaniards, you first distribute profits just in case something happens. Didn't this pose a problem for you?
In the analysis carried out for the operation, the company's annual accounts were, of course, examined for the year 2019. And it was seen that there had been a dividend distribution, which I think, well, I don't know why, there has been some confusion between the dividend distribution at Globalia and the dividend distribution at the beneficiary companies.
What happens is that Globalia is the owner, don't tell me about Mr. Lora, of 95% of Europa. There are answers that are even offensive to those of us who are asking. I'm not saying it because of you, I'm saying it because saying, no, it's Globalia, but Globalia, everyone watching us, needs to know that it's the owner of 95% of Europa, 95% the Hidalgo family in that distribution.
So, when the analysis was done, it was found that there had been a dividend distribution that had been made based on the results of fiscal year 19, and that the annual accounts reflected that dividend distribution. Truly, according to the law, it was done properly. And another thing is, as you mentioned, the assessments, whether moral or not.
Right. What happens is that Ms. Calvillo found it unacceptable, so unacceptable that she distanced herself from that operation. She even stated it publicly. Come on, you have to read the media, especially when it affects decisions you've been involved in. She found it, the word is unacceptable. Because what can't happen is that, let's see, first they take their share, 40 million, and then end up asking for 475. Man, they could have left that 40 and would only have had to ask for 425. It was a decision.
We did a technical analysis of the request, not a subjective assessment of that kind.
Thank you. Very well. And I'll move on to another section, to Plus Ultra. The characteristics of the company are well known. 3 planes, 0.3% of the traffic at INA, a dire economic situation, to the point that the ICO didn't want to grant them a loan. Why was this bailout so urgent? This is another one that was processed in 160 days. It's the second fastest. What made it so urgent?
Urgent. No one conveyed any sense of urgency to me with this operation. It was one of the first to submit its application. And the criterion was that we had to process the applications in the order they were submitted. And the normal procedure for analyzing the application was followed. I think, if I remember correctly, there were 3 requests for correction for additional information that were raised within the work team. The procedure for appointing advisors was requested from the Council Secretariat. The advisors were appointed.
But look, I'm asking you because in the end, as I said at the beginning, the police are investigating and the UCO concludes in one of its reports that along those lines at that time, given how things were set up with the COVID situation and the mobility difficulties, distinguished members of the Venezuelan government were traveling. Ábalos, through Coldo, provided them with a credential for a meeting at the ministry, and that allowed them to travel to Spain. And obviously the police will say what was or wasn't on those planes, if it ever becomes known. But that was the determining factor for the police investigation, or one of the determining factors, because there are several that made it necessary to decide on that aid quickly. Did you confirm in your final report that Plus Ultra was strategic? I did not.
I have no report on that operation and didn't confirm anything.
But well, when you submitted reports together with Mr. Lora, even though Mr. Lora was your superior, do you understand what strategic status means? I'm asking you directly.
I didn't have the authority to determine whether a company was strategic or not. This was determined by the reports that came from the Ministry of Transport, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, and AESA, and that was what was made available to the Management Board, and it was based on those reports that the Management Board itself considered the company to be strategic. I wasn't authorized to decide if a company was strategic.
Very well. Did SEPI analyze the following circumstance when the application was accepted? I'll summarize it for you. Look, in the end, on September 20th, the application was processed, and there were some transactions for $1.5 million in loans that were granted to Plus Ultra. One came from England and another from Switzerland, and the third one was also from Switzerland, right? But thank you. The origin of that money was actually quite dubious. I'm saying this because basically, there's an investigation for money laundering. And what surprises me is that you weren't concerned about those transactions because in the end, it's obvious. The company was a shell company. It had no employees, no office. And it turns out that the three companies granting those loans had the same owner. And the question is, did nobody notice this? You didn't analyze anything. In the end, honestly, I'm going to leave with a rather strange feeling. I don't know why you were there, and I don't know why the whole setup was put together. Because if, when there's an application for aid, you suddenly see certain transactions, which I think would catch anyone's attention, even if it didn't catch yours. Honestly, I'm now being told you didn't analyze it. No.
My job was to coordinate the work team.
No one from that point of view. But that work team you coordinated, no one told you, hey, watch out, this is happening?
Well, about the bridge loans, no one told me.
Did everyone miss it? No.
We didn't miss it.
You already know what happens, but I'll say it. I hadn't planned to tell you. Look, the salaries at the EPI are over 200,000 euros, and it turns out that the officials, who aren't really officials, the most qualified workers in this country who are at the EPI, haven't noticed any of it. But do you really think I'm going to believe that? I'm telling you, I don't believe it. I'll explain later why I don't believe it.
What I can tell you is that the contracts were made available to the legal advisor and the financial advisor. They were analyzed, they were described in the due diligence report, and they didn't raise any objections.
Right. Look, did you inform the external consultants, the two that were there, Deloitte and advisor legally, about this circumstance I just mentioned?
The contracts were reviewed by Deloitte, no.
Did you inform them or not about these circumstances regarding these later loans, which clearly came from a highly dubious source? Or did you just hand over the initial documentation and forget about everything that happened afterward in the operation?
Well, no, we didn't analyze each document, at least I didn't. The documentation was made available to the advisor and they analyzed it.
They sent it to them, what I just told you about the $1.5 million, they sent it to them.
To Deloitte, it was in a data room, they analyzed it, and these contracts are mentioned in Deloitte's report.
And they didn't see anything either, no. Deloitte and the other company, did they warn them about the problem with the participating loan of 6.3 million, that it was a simulated loan? Because 4 were immobilized in the Commonwealth Bank and Trust. They didn't warn them?
That there was a loan of 6 million.
Participating?
Yes, of course, a participating loan of 6 million.
But there was a problem. A participating loan in the end has conditions that are not like an ordinary loan. I think you know that, so I'm not going to explain it to you. But what invalidated that loan, at least 4 million of it, is that it was pledged, just so we're clear, it served as collateral for something else. Therefore, if you were going to enforce it, it had priority over a participating loan, just so we're clear. The characteristic is that it doesn't have priority over ordinary loans. And in this case, 4 million did have it, which meant that it wasn't really a participating loan as such. And you didn't realize that.
The participating loan was analyzed. The advisors, both the financial and the legal ones, analyzed the participating loan and the deposit that was held as collateral. Neither of them included it in their reports.
The external advisors?
The external advisors pointed out that this loan
was, you know what happens? It's crucial. It's crucial because if you take out the 4 million from the capital, you incur grounds for dissolution under Article 363, and therefore you don't.
But that's an interpretation that the advisors,
both financial and legal, don't use. Now let's talk about the advisors because, look, Mr. Laura, I don't understand you. Well, I suppose you'll explain it to me now. I read the newspaper El Mundo. Leo Manuel Zulueta, does that name ring a bell to you? You must know him. You've talked to him. Statements from Mr. Zulueta. This is what gives anyone goosebumps. You bring him the documents to the external advisors, and Mr. Zulueta says, among many other things, the following. It was not verified that the information was true. One. They assumed and this is the serious part, and let the record show that the way Plus Ultra was accounting was correct. That is to say, they didn't analyze whether that participating loan was properly accounted for or not. I mean, this sentence is devastating. They assumed that everything Plus Ultra had presented was correct because it wasn't their job to verify it. And I ask you this question, and in the end, they just say, we prepared a guide for SEPI so they could do their own investigations. You can check it yourself in El Mundo. If this is the case, and I have no doubt that it is, the conclusion is that you handed over the responsibility, you gave it to a company, to a firm so they could prepare a report, but the firms didn't analyze the information. So the question that comes to my mind is, why did you hire them for this, if not just to dress things up?
Allow me regarding the, well, I don't remember exactly all the contents of the report because I no longer have access to the information. But regarding the participating loan and its accounting, we based ourselves on the report from the external auditor of Plus Ultra. We can't question when there's an audit report whether the loan is properly accounted for or not. And regarding then...
Mr. Parteroy, what was the point of so many reports if you couldn't question the loan? The Plus Ultra auditor's report, I questioned the Plus Ultra auditor's report, and I'm not such a specialist, but look, I do understand a thing or two about participating loans. And it's clear that it's not a participating loan, since there are 4 million that serve as collateral for something else. It automatically loses that status, and therefore, look, I'm going to ask you, you were at SEPI when Mr. Garicano gave you a hard time with this. Did Mr. Garicano request information about the Plus Ultra operation? Well, I don't know. He doesn't know.
To SEPI?
SEPI doesn't know.
I don't know if SEPI, I wasn't aware that,
What happened? Did what happened happen? I'm going to tell you. Mr. Garicano, who is a state economist and a highly qualified civil servant, saw it very clearly and started requesting documents and filed a complaint in Europe. And it turns out that you who work at SEPI don't know. And do you know how they closed that complaint? Do you know how the government closed it? They put pressure on a commission in Europe, and in the end, they ruled that Mr. Garicano was not competent to request that documentation. Europe did not rule on whether that participating loan was, so to speak, a sham or not. No. They closed it due to pressure from the Socialist Parliamentary Group. You can verify this by calling Europe. That investigation by Mr. Garicano, that's what happened, because it's textbook that this company was subject to dissolution. Later, I will refer to the AINA aviation reports that you mentioned. Because, of course, in the end, I didn't understand much, but now I finally get it. Why the reports from the American advisors? The Americans have a disclaimer clause for us.
Well, all of them, of course.
Because since they don't trust the information provided by SEPI, because they don't know, nobody checks anything there. And he says, just in case with the documentation you give me, I issue a report, but if there's anything else, I disclaim responsibility.
If you allow me, sir, I believe that all advisors of any kind make their disclaimers and that they have not verified the accuracy of the information because the information is provided to them.
But don't you find it especially serious that the person in charge of making the report says she doesn't analyze the accounting, that she just assumes it's correct? I mean, if the Spanish people are listening to us, they're really going to be a lot more worried than they already were about what has happened at SEPI.
The analysis that was assigned to the independent advisors was a due diligence analysis similar to the one carried out in any company acquisition operation. And I understand that they don't go into the company's ERP to analyze the accounting and that they analyze the company's financial statements, but very well.
You've already answered me. Look, let's go to the internal reports. Did you ask Human Resources for a report on the employment impact of the Plus Ultra operation?
In the operation of Plus Ultra, as I mentioned before, no reports were made by the departments because it was decided that the reports from the external advisors were sufficient. So, no.
There are reports, there are no internal reports, no. But do you know that Ms. Gualda, Mr. Lora, and Minister Montero have stated here very clearly that there were both external and internal reports that were favorable? Now you say there are no internal reports in the operation.
In the Ultra operation and in all the operations that were carried out after the framework agreement for financial and legal advisors was in force. At least in the operations I handled, there were no internal reports because it was decided they weren't necessary since there were already external advisors. And there was a heavy workload at SEPI and no reports were made. Otherwise, they would be part of the file. There were no reports in the operation.
And no one from the departments, the finance department included, participated or issued anything.
In the work team that was analyzing the documentation, there was a member from each of those support departments analyzing the documentation, requesting information so that...
So were they analyzing or not?
They reviewed the documentation and participated in the work team, interacted with the advisors, and reviewed the advisors' reports. But there isn't an internal report?
There isn't any. But do you know what the problem is? Which is that Mr. Lora came here to claim that they existed, but then when he saw he was cornered, when he didn't know how to get out, he said, I signed them myself, and he was totally unfazed.
He signs the draft resolution?
Yes, I understood that, but he signed the reports too. You didn't read them, you didn't see them, the notes were included. This needs to be explained. SEPI, a note. When the directors of SEPI don't like a report, the people in charge with responsibility issue a note that they are not allowed to sign, but they leave a record in the file. Did you read the notes that said, now I'll tell you what the notes said, because this thing about them not participating, that they participated and didn't inform, well, what do you want me to say the truth? It just doesn't add up for me. What the note said, one of them, was that Plus Ultra had been carrying losses since 2019, that it wasn't strategic, that it had a severe weakness with the participating loan, and that there was a deferred asset, which you know perfectly well, for taxes, company losses that shouldn't have been recorded. And that distorted the financial picture even more. From SEPI, all of that is in the file, and you didn't read it.
I don't remember a note that pointed out what you're saying.
So are there notes or not?
There were emails from the departments in which...
There were emails that are notes, I'm telling you. If you don't know that's called a note in SEPI, I assure you it is. Do they exist or not?
No.
Did they question the deferred asset or not?
I don't remember any.
Note or email that questioned the asset. Listen, I'll say something. For the most complicated bailout or aid there's ever been, the fact that you don't remember the essential point that SEPI's technical staff questioned this aid strikes me, Mr. Lora, as especially serious. What do you want me to say?
Excuse me, but the internal SEPI team, which saw the reports from the external advisors and analyzed the operation, nobody told me anything. That the operation failed to meet one of the eligibility criteria.
So did they send it to Mr. Lora? If they didn't send it to you, who was the director of subsidiaries and an essential part in putting together the whole file?
I don't know if Mr. Lora was sent any kind of documentation. The
note is...
The only thing that was made clear internally is indeed that the company was carrying losses, that it had a negative working capital, but not that there was a...
I'm going to ask you, did the legal advisory department issue a favorable report or not?
In the Plus Ultra operation.
Yes. The tax department, no.
None. There were no reports from the departments in the Plus Ultra operation.
But do you know why there were no reports? Because they were opposed to the operation, because they weren't convinced by it, because what I just told you is what the notes say. In the operation of Mr. Parte Arroyo, what I just told you is what's in the notes, which questioned the aid that was going to be given to SEPI. That's the problem with this issue. Look, let's continue. You've already made your point clear to me. In the end, you resolve it with 2 reports. You just made it clear from the Aviation Directorate, in which one does not go into a deep analysis of the accounting, which was crucial for Plus Ultra. And I go back to the participating loan, because it was a company that, in order to keep its license, used those matters and others as well. But there was an order. Are you sure you weren't pressured with this? With this case file that had to be pushed through no matter what, Plus Ultra? No. No? Very well. Look, let's move on to another topic. Moving on. Instituto de Empresa. You were the director of portfolio companies and had SEPIDIs under your supervision. It depended on you. In the end, you were a board member. Well, you held a position at SEPIDIS. That's correct.
Yes, I was at SEPI from 2012 to 2022 as Director of Portfolio Companies. And in September 2022, I moved to SEPI as the Director of Strategy.
Very well. As the Director of Portfolio Companies, look, I'm not going to recount the history of the Campo Velázquez buildings because it's rather odd. In the end, the Spanish, there was a deal with Iberia Cordion for 25 million, which would take me some time to explain. But in the end, the question I ask you is, was there a reduction in the rental prices of properties owned by SEPIDs during the pandemic?
I have not been aware of any such rent reduction.
Now then, if you're the Director of Portfolio Companies, sir,
No one informed me.
could they have done it without your knowledge? Yes. It's possible.
CPDs has a specific operating regulation because it operates in both the corporate and real estate sectors. But it's a transaction, a rent reduction, or a change in the lease terms. If they had done it, they would have had to inform me. And right now, I don't remember the exact regulatory rule, but it probably required authorization from the SEPIDs Management Committee. But under its own operating rules, since real estate is its ordinary business, SEPIDs directly handles the rental of any assets it owns.
They weren't required to report to the Director of Investee Companies.
No? In that specific matter, they can act independently and authorize the rental of a company. I mean, of an asset, sorry. SEPIs. SEPIs then?
My role as Director of Investee Companies, beyond monitoring the POA and developing strategy, is not basically to oversee the main issues that arise there. But this wasn't an important matter, a savings of 7 million a year.
I am not aware that this rent reduction took place. I mean, I have no knowledge of it.
He doesn't know about it.
I don't know about it because while I was the Director of Investee Companies, I had no knowledge of it. And the only information I have about them is what has recently come out in the press. I mean, I'm quite surprised that one was done.
I'm asking you because INA didn't lower the rents, nor did the Genesis building, which is where the ECE agency is located either. So, of course, it's obvious that there were special circumstances, but if prices are kept at certain levels for some companies and not for others, it's clear that something has happened there. Do you know what's going on?
I would find it unheard of. Excuse me for interrupting, Your Honor. I would find it unheard of if that price reduction had been made.
But do you know what's going on? Do you know what's going on? Look, this is actually very easy to check. SEPI would be able to check it very easily. Instituto de Empresa would have an even easier time proving it, and now it's denying all this. All they would have to do is show the contracts and the amounts they've paid. Neither SEPI provides us with that, nor does the Instituto de Empresa, which also hasn't wanted to send a single document on this matter. Something that doesn't affect anything at all. Neither the company nor SEPI, because showing some rent receipts doesn't affect economic activity, and that's being denied. Do you know why? Look, I've talked to several people who assure me that this has happened, but this is already written down as well. I've seen this written in some media outlets, but they're talking about 8, even the vice president, someone who was president of SEPI, I'm telling you. It must be Vicente Fernandez.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry I can't help you with this, but I am completely unaware of that matter. It wasn't passed on to me. The only thing I was aware of is that a loan of 5 million euros was given to Instituto de Empresa.
That's what I was going to talk about now. It's normal. It's normal for SEPI to give loans to a company like Instituto de Empresa. SEPI also gives loans to other types of companies. It's part of SEPI's functions.
I was surprised the loan was granted.
I appreciate it because it doesn't fit with the FAI, it doesn't fit with the credits, it doesn't fit with any of the aid that SEPIDEX gives. I appreciate your answer and your honesty. I was surprised.
Yes, it's true that at that time at SEPIDEX, a framework for aid was approved, or let's call it that, to grant deferrals, rent holidays to help the company's own tenants. And I think that in the case of the Instituto de Empresa, it was structured that way. That's what I think.
And the last issue, the famous sale of the Campo Velázquez building. In the end, the Instituto de Empresa, which also denies it, did or did not make efforts to try to buy the Campo Velázquez building.
Well, what I have...
seen is that what really surprises me, believe me, I know the position you have and the responsibility you have, that you try to sell a building worth 250 million and the director of investing companies doesn't know about it. Well, excuse me.
Forgive me for confirming it to you, but I had no knowledge of what has come out.
In the press. You know what happens? Not about the letter or anything. I mean, there were as many as 8 meetings. In one of them, someone lost their temper and threw a computer on the floor. Look at how much detail I'm giving you. Look at how much detail I'm giving you. You know perfectly well who I'm talking about.
No, excuse me.
But no, haven't they told you?
No, it's just that they haven't told me.
Maybe I'll tell you after the meeting. I don't know about that conversation.
Besides, for that sale, a bidding process would be necessary. It would even have to be authorized by the SEPI board of directors.
On paper, yes, but do you know what happens? The thing is, Instituto de Empresa, if you want, I can remind you, Instituto de Empresa, Egoña Gomez, the Africa Center, Wakalua, all the aid that's around. Of course, we're not just talking. I also understand that a sale of that magnitude requires some significant legal steps, but with this government, well, look, sometimes we're talking about 475 million given in 60 days in an operation that was much more complex. Celsa, which I repeat, 25,000 workers, and they kept them like that for 2.5 years. The operation was more complex because of all the complexity it involved, loans, global scope, and so on. Look, I'm going to bring up another issue, Correos. As the director of subsidiaries, you also had authority over Correos. Regarding the hiring of Lady Diaz, were you consulted? Were you consulted? No. Did you authorize that hiring? No. They didn't even ask you? That's right, no. Look, I don't quite understand then what your role as director of subsidiaries was.
Well, my duties as director of subsidiaries were what they were, not what we might have wanted them to be or not to be. The hiring of executives in the companies that depend on the subsidiaries' management did not go through the directors of subsidiaries themselves. And they were only authorized by the SEPI Management Committee.
Of course, look, I mean, the director of subsidiaries.
But this lady's appointment isn't authorized. But yes.
It's authorized in the Management Committee. I knew perfectly well that it was in the SEPI Management Committee. No. And nobody questioned it. Yes, it was authorized in the Management Committee. What's more, I'll tell you, even the salary changes allow me approved by the SEPI Management Committee.
Let me answer. In the SEPI Management Committee, only senior management contracts under royal decree were approved. This was one from 2012 at Correos. But the appointment of Lair, I don't remember that.
You authorized it then, Management Committee. You authorized it. I authorized it. I mean, Mr. Serrano called the Management Committee and no one questioned the background of Ms. Lair Diaz.
It's just that she wasn't a 401.
I don't think she
was a 451. I don't think she was a 451.
I don't have much time left. What criteria did the CP Board of Directors follow to purchase 2 Airbus A330 aircraft? An activity that had nothing to do with Correos' business.
Correos did not purchase any aircraft.
No, 25 million.
By?
They rented them.
No, I mean what Correos did here with Correos Cargo is what we did at SEPI. It was authorized in the Management Committee. A new line of business, which was a pilot project in a joint venture with Envelope for the transport business. Of course.
But the planes, were the planes leased or bought? 25 million.
The planes were provided by Envelope. They were owned by Envelope, and the investment, I don't remember exactly, but it was an investment that wasn't very high.
In the end, you can read it in all the media. 25 million.
I think that what?
The loss caused by the operation, 25 million euros.
What I knew and what we authorized in the SEPI Management Committee was the authorization of the new line of business that Correos was going to develop as a pilot project for a plane.
Of course, the problem was that it flew twice and the operation cost 25 million. And the question is, who has taken responsibility for that? No one. Not Mr. Serrano, the Management Committee, you or anyone else.
We authorized the development of a business line. If it is later carried out or how that business line is carried out, that's an issue that
only the director, Mr. Serrano, is responsible for. The rest just authorized the operation. Are you aware if any note was also issued against this operation? You're not aware of it.
No, it's not that I was unaware of it. The operations were submitted to the management committee along with reports from each of the departments that had to provide information.
And there was no one who raised doubts in any department, right?
I don't recall any doubts because if there were doubts in the reports or issues,
Getting their authorization would have caused issues. That raised some problems, especially because the destination was China, some issues related to paying taxes and so on.
I don't recall those things being mentioned.
Very well, that's all, Mr. Patrullo. My time is up. I don't want to take advantage of the chairwoman's kindness, and I sincerely thank you. I say it from the heart. I thank you for your answers. I finally understood what was impossible for me a few days ago. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Suarez Lamata. Now it's Mrs. Gomez Enriquez's turn. You have 25 minutes. Please go ahead, Mrs. Gomez.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, Mr. Patrullo. Welcome to this committee. You were the Director of Subsidiaries at SEPI, a key figure in the validation of strategic bailouts, which are now under judicial scrutiny, such as those of Air Europa and Plus Ultra. You were the technical manager of the phase aid files, managed the fund, and were also directly responsible for validating the files and giving technical approval to the state loans. Now your handling is being examined as part of the UCO investigations for alleged irregularities. Irregularities that show your judgment was not only technical, but also political and allegedly personal as well. Turning the phase fund into an ATM for friends of the government and also for your own private benefit. Let's start with the bailout of Air Europa, 475 million euros in 2021, right? After this bailout, you were appointed as a board member of the airline by SEPI to oversee that public money that was injected. It was a fast-track operation while the country was in lockdown, and a bailout that you approved under the shadow of intermediaries like Mr. Aldama and with the constant presence of Mr. Coldo. I would like to know, Mr. Parterolo, how many intermediaries did you usually meet with? Sorry, how many? How many intermediaries did you usually meet with?
I have never met with any intermediary, or at least not with anyone I knew was an intermediary to begin with. And with everything you are mentioning, I do want to make it clear what my duties were at SEPI as the Director of Subsidiaries, since I held the position of Director of Subsidiaries and the companies that were under that subsidiaries division. And in the phase operations, I want to remind you that there were 4 directors of subsidiaries, because, I mean, it seems like I was the only one at SEPI handling the phase, just me. And I handled 4 operations from the Solvency Fund, and my duties were to coordinate the SEPI work team and the relationship with the advisors. And I had neither the authority nor the capacity nor signing authority to decide on any operation. I'll continue with the... No, it's because I left it, of course.
I'm clear about it because before preparing my remarks, I studied your role within SEPI very well.
So additionally, I didn't have... No. I only had a technical position. I haven't performed political functions, nor have I had political interests. Thank you.
So let's continue. Do you know the gentleman? Do you know him? I don't have as much time as the Partido Popular since I have to share it with another colleague. So I'll get straight to the point. Do you know Mr. Aldama?
No.
Has he never crossed paths with you at SEPI? No. Have you never had any meetings with him outside SEPI? No. How do you explain that the Europa file was approved in weeks, while hundreds of strategic SMEs waited months for a response from your department?
In the Europa operation, followed the timeline that was necessary to complete the analysis of the operation.
Did you receive calls or messages from Coldo urging you to prioritize the Europa file? No. From no one? Not even from the Ministry of Transport?
Neither.
Nothing. So why was it rescued faster than other companies? Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
You don't know?
If the director...
At that time, had the file on his desk. You must know why it was rescued before other companies.
Mainly because it was the first request. Internal analyses were done at SEPI. Yes, they told us that the Vice President told us we had to speed things up because of the problems the company was having. It could go into default because of the pressure they were under from the lessors, and also because it was in a rather urgent situation.
So no one asked you to hurry?
The only one who told me that this operation had to be done faster
was... Who told you that?
The Vice President and then the company itself.
Can you say the name of the Vice President?
Bartolome Lora.
Bartolome Lora told you that you had to be quick in approving that file so it could be rescued with the utmost urgency.
And then the company itself was also asking us, given that situation, to do so. Yes.
But through the company itself, who was the person asking you? What's their name?
My relationship with Air Europa was with the chief financial officer,
What's their name?
Miguel Angel Sánchez, okay, and with the director of legal affairs, with Ramiro Campos, who were the two people we communicated with to manage the operation.
Did they always ask for things to be expedited? Yes, they did. Never through Aldama? No. Okay, you were appointed as a board member of Air Europa after the bailout. Your mission was to control the money. The payment of bonuses to executives was expressly prohibited until 75% of the aid received had been reimbursed. But the Hidalgo family ignored this and approved million-euro payments of more than 2 million euros shortly after the bailout. You knew about this. Why did you authorize it?
I had no knowledge of any incentive or bonus payments, nor did I authorize them. In any case, I believe that the bonuses paid to the Air Europa management team were not actually given, because if they had been, but...
Doesn't it seem strange to you? One moment, let's take it step by step. Doesn't it seem strange to you that a company asking for a bailout because it is insolvent, no money at that moment due to the effect of COVID, receives those 475 million euros and then goes on to pay more than 2 million euros in bonuses? It's one of two things. Either they didn't have money and took bailout money to pay the bonuses, or they lied to you and actually had money. And you gave them a bailout in both cases when they didn't deserve it. I wasn't aware.
I wasn't aware, I didn't authorize it, and besides, I think that the bonuses, these people were employees of Globalia, and the bonus would be paid in Globalia, but I don't know the details.
So, what was your duty of oversight? Because you were there as the CEO. You were supposed to oversee the money that was given to this company. If you don't know anything, where was your duty of oversight? As a board member?
As a board member, yes, within the duties of a board member.
But let's see, Mr. Partarulo, we're talking about 2 million euros in bonuses. So don't tell me you didn't know about that.
What? No, of course not.
You didn't know about it? Then why were you there as a board member?
I was never aware at any time, nor was I told or informed that any kind of variable compensation had been paid to these people in the euro.
Everyone knows it except you, who were on the front line.
No, it's just that and well, anyone here can hide anything, but what I do believe is that yes, well, no.
You weren't paying attention.
What I think, well, is that I'm not in the company controlling those who are being controlled.
But you were a board member.
Not controlling the payments, collections.
You were a board member to see if that money was really being used for what the company requested, not to pay bonuses of more than 2 million euros. It slipped by you, didn't it? No, it didn't slip by me. If it didn't slip by you, why didn't you know?
Excuse me, Your Honor, the duties of a board member, just like in the Oversight Committee for Face Operations, the role and obligation is not to check if a specific payment has been made unless it is submitted for approval by the Board of Directors.
But you, as a board member, had to prevent that public money from being diverted for unauthorized purposes. And in this case, that purpose for the bonus was not allowed. I insist,
Your Honor, I had no knowledge of that bonus. I believe it wasn't paid by Air Europa because they were employees of Globalia. And secondly, the interpretation of the FAST regulation regarding variable compensation. I mean, no, I don't have the legal interpretation, but it was intended for the members of the Board of Directors. Yes.
but it doesn't matter if it's Europa or Globalia. In the end, it's the same company. In the end, the owner is the same. In the end, that owner can use that money and allocate it.
My obligations as a board member or as a member of the monitoring committee for the Air Europa operation end with the beneficiaries, which are Air Europa, which is Europa, not Europa, Air Europa.
Do you think there was malfeasance or embezzlement by omission?
Where?
In this case?
Not on my part, of course.
No, you don't think so. Was there a separate decision-making process that favored the Hidalgo family over SEPI's technical rigor? Yes.
Above? Yes. Well, I don't know. No.
You can't tell me you don't know because it's more than obvious. Yes.
I mean, I was unaware of all the political matters or anything that went beyond what my duties were.
No, 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 no. We're talking about a rescue that was done in that way, and you know how it was done in that way, benefiting the Hidalgo family. And of course, there was a parallel channel. If not, why is it in the courts? Because it was under judicial scrutiny. If everything was so clean and transparent, Mr. Pertarroyo, let's use some common sense.
I invite you to let me explain what my duties were and what it was all about.
But the thing is, this was part of your duties. You were involved in this rescue.
Well, I was the one coordinating the operation, but I wasn't outside the operation or outside SEPI at any point.
Did you know that the company was in a critical situation long before the pandemic?
Air Europa?
Yes.
I mean, the situation the company had at the end of 2019, which is what we analyzed, was a healthy company with little debt and 27 million in profits.
Debt?
The debt. It wasn't a company in debt except for the short term, I think.
Okay, you didn't see any irregularity. Everything was perfect.
Everything was correct. Yes, well, no.
Okay, well, because of time constraints, I would like to talk more about this rescue, but I'm going to move on to Plus Ultra. And we move on to Plus Ultra with 53 million euros, an airline with just 0.03% market share and only one plane. You declared it strategic when your own technicians refused to sign the reports out of fear of legal consequences. How do you justify declaring a company with just 0.03% market share and only one plane as strategic?
As I have said before, I did not have the authority, nor did I declare that the company was strategic.
You had the technical team that validated these reports. Don't tell me you didn't have the authority.
No, I didn't have the authority to declare whether a company was strategic or not. I coordinated to make sure the reports existed, the reports that were required by the guidelines.
Okay, and in those reports, what was reflected? That it was strategic or that it wasn't strategic? In that report, what information did you provide in those reports? What did you notice in the reports?
No, well, that there were reasons why the Directorate General of Civil Aviation considered that the company could be considered strategic.
I mean, they were the reasons from civil aviation, not SEPI's reasons.
No, of course.
No, so what's the point of SEPI if it's not useful? What is it for?
SEPI didn't have the authority. SEPI didn't have the authority to determine whether a company was strategic or not.
So how is the bailout granted? Based on what, Mr. Partarullo?
Based on the third-party report, that is from the General Directorate.
Of Civil Aviation, not you, but you don't check third-party reports.
Yes, we verify the reports.
And those reports that the technicians refused to sign, why do the technicians refuse to sign them?
No technician has refused to sign.
They're all signed.
There were no reports in the Plus Ultra operation.
So there were no reports then?
Based on internal reports, there were no reports.
So based on what? All the external reports? Yes, but those could be manipulated. Because look, I don't work at SEPI, but if someone puts an airline in front of me with only 0.03% market share and just one plane, I would just close the file right away. It wasn't strategic. It's as clear as day. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't. I mean, you don't have to be Einstein here to know what's strategic and what's not strategic.
I can't say if the company was strategic since I don't have that authority and I haven't seen it as strategic. Why did the management board decide?
Why did you approve the bailout knowing that the technical reports lacked signatures?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? It's just that I didn't...
I don't know which report you're referring to. Why did you push the bailout forward knowing that the technical reports lacked signatures? Even your own team refused to sign them.
No one from my team refused to sign any report. No one signed that kind of report because we weren't required to. I didn't do it. I didn't sign. No, the management of my participants didn't have, they never reported the operations. I didn't make a report to confirm with a signature. In the Plus Ultra operations and some others that were carried out during that whole period, there were no internal reports from the technicians, nor any signatures.
I get the feeling that SEPI is a racket that hands out money like crazy to those connected to the government. Because it's not normal that everyone who comes here and works at SEPI and has responsibilities at SEPI doesn't know anything. It's not normal, Mr. Partarroyo. You can't fool us because we come prepared with documentation. And there are reports from the UCO where all this information I'm telling you is documented. I'm not making this up, this exists.
All I can tell you is, and you don't know anything, all I can tell you is, no, it's not that I know something or don't know anything. The only thing I can tell you is what I did and what my responsibilities were at SEPI.
Okay, but let's see, I'll continue. According to the SEPI fund regulations, companies in crisis before 2019 cannot be rescued, and Plus Ultra had been accumulating continuous losses since its creation and was only operating with a single plane at the time of the rescue. Could you, I'll rephrase it again, detail what overriding interest or what call from outside convinced you to rescue it?
I didn't receive any external call, nor did anyone convince me of anything.
Okay, did someone convince you to accept? Who convinced you to accept the last-minute loan from Panacor as proof of viability instead of classifying the company as insolvent and denying them the aid? As SEPI's own technical manual required?
No one convinced me of anything. Did you know? We relied on Advisor Vale's report.
Did you consider the financial aspect?
That the company's eligibility criteria were met. Okay.
If it was an insolvent company that became insolvent through a loan, were you aware of this loan?
If only it was in the info they gave us. Did you know?
About this loan, right?
Of course, it was a participating loan.
This loan, when the company acquires it, it already becomes insolvent. That's not an irregularity. And the origin of the loan isn't an irregularity either.
Let's see, both the report from the company's internal auditor and the report from DC Advisory, the independent advisor on the transaction, they analyzed that participating loan. They considered it was a loan that
was made to Catalonia. And you, what orders did you follow? And you, what orders did you follow?
No, it's not about following orders. It's that the auditor's report treats the loan as valid, so the company doesn't.
Could you provide the auditor's name here?
I'm not sure if it was Audi Car, or something similar. I can't recall the exact name.
An external company?
Like the auditor, because it was a company subject to audit, he was the auditor of Plus Ultra, the one who audited their annual accounts.
But for everything that comes from outside, there is no internal control. For everything that comes from outside, there is no internal control within SEPI.
An audit report from a registered certified auditor is like questioning the audit reports of a company's accounts. No, but
anyone with a duty to supervise can make mistakes, right?
In the audit report?
Well, why not?
Well, yes, but no, it wasn't within our duties to question.
You give
as valid
everything that comes from outside the EPI. Te da por válido todo lo que venga del exterior de la SEPI.
No, it's not that I consider everything that comes as valid.
All the reports that come from outside the EPI are valid.
It's not that they come from outside. The audit report of the operation of Plus Ultra's annual accounts is included in the file within the documentation provided by the company for its application. And the external reports are not exactly coming from an outsider.
Let me clarify, because I think you haven't quite understood. But according to investigations, Eurolinia used a simulated loan of 6.3 million euros from the Panamanian entity. Panacor to dress up its accounts and pretend to have solvency it didn't actually have, which was an essential requirement to receive public funds. You didn't know that.
I'll give you the same answer. I didn't know. We knew that this participating loan existed, but after being reviewed by the external advisor, nothing was brought to light.
Did you know Mr. Avalos? No. Didn't Mr. Avalos have any connection? You also don't know if he had anything to do with this bailout? Well, I don't know, because I've read statements from you in the press where you said Mr. Partarroyo claims that he was under double pressure, on one hand from Mr. Avalos.
I don't know Mr. Avalos. I haven't been pressured. On the other hand,
from José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. Do you know him? No.
I don't know him either.
You don't know him either?
No, I don't know what you think should be said. I was just a technical person, not involved politically. I mean, Mr. Zapatero.
Mr. Zapatero never called you or pressured you to accept the Panacor loan so that your team could validate the bailout. Nothing? Then why did they validate it? It's an undeserved bailout. But because he
is with the reports that are prepared.
Let's see if the reports, we know what those reports are like, Mr. Partarroyo, for God's sake.
Excuse me, this is the financial advisor's report.
External. So why is it under judicial scrutiny if things weren't done properly?
I don't know.
She doesn't know? Well, that's it then. So Mr. Zapatero didn't pressure you about how quickly you processed the file? No. Why was there such urgency? Who pressured you? Who was calling? Not me.
I don't think the report...
As you mentioned, they kept calling you in Europe. I don't consider
that the report, that the consultation operation was handled with any undue haste or anything like that, because I think it followed fairly standard timelines in the analysis of this type of operation.
Knowing what you know today, knowing the information you know today, do you consider this company strategic?
It's just that I don't have the authority to...
To determine whether it is or not. No, I'm asking you a question. It's not about authority. You no longer work at SEPI, SEPIDES, or any of those organizations. Given what you know today, do you consider Plus Ultra a strategic company? Yes or no?
That's a subjective assessment that I don't think I have to make or give an opinion on, of course.
Determine.
So it's just that, look,
Mr. Parteroyo, it wasn't strategic. It only had one plane. It was insolvent. It became somewhat solvent through a loan from Venezuela of dubious origin. It was used for money laundering. It wasn't even clear if it was transporting passengers or other things besides passengers. And even so, you gave it 53 million euros.
you're suggesting I gave something to this company, but I didn't. I lacked authority to decide if it was strategic or to approve the operation, which was authorized by the fund's management board.
Mr. Parteroyo, what role did Camilo Ibrahim play in the presentation of Plus Ultra's viability plan?
I don't know this gentleman.
You don't know Camilo Ibrahim? No. Is it true that he was the intermediary who assured you that the money from Panama for this loan was clean so you could rescue the Eurolinia? No, I didn't know that.
We only dealt with the company's financial director and his team.
And now a question that I think you can answer, given your professional background and career. Plus Ultra has recently requested to renegotiate its debt because it cannot pay. How strange. They couldn't pay before, during, or now, even less. You admit that your viability plan amounted to absolute professional negligence.
I think the viability plan was validated by him.
Do you realize that it's not real?
That it's not real.
Which one? That viability plan is validated because the company can't pay the debt. Yes, that plan was favorable. The viability plan was favorable.
The viability plan was prepared by the company in the year 2020. When the application is submitted, it is analyzed by the financial advisor. He considers that he states the plan is reasonable, viable, and has repayment capacity, so the operation is authorized. What happens next? What happens next regarding the evolution or progress of a company, as with any viability plan, depends on many circumstances and on how that plan is executed.
But not because it was poorly analyzed. That company was insolvent at the beginning, during, and at the end. Let that be clear, since we all know it here. You extended a lot. You also did a lot of other bailouts, and it was precisely for industrial companies that were already practically in a tailspin. I'm telling you. Tubos Reunidos, 112 million euros.
Excuse me, but not me. I only participated in 4 operations.
Didn't you participate in Tubos Reunidos? No. And in Duro Felguera, 120 million neither. And in Avaris?
I did participate in Avaris.
I did participate in Avaris. So not Tubos Reunidos or Duro Felguera. No. Okay.
Well, no.
He charged a lot. Don't you know the consultants who received a success bonus for the Duro Felguera rescue either?
No, I wasn't part of that operation. Nothing else.
You didn't know anything. It didn't cross your desk, but no. But you rescued 30 companies.
No, I didn't rescue them.
Sorry, how many did you rescue?
Excuse me. There were 4 subsidiary directors who were in charge of coordinating the operations.
Your team? How many rescues went through your team? 4. Only 4. So it's not true that 30 went through.
Europa, Ultra, Avaris, and Otusa.
Okay. Avaris was granted 320 million euros to facilitate its merger with Globalia at Conviage. The UCO is investigating whether the cash needs were inflated so that the state would finance the merger of 2 private giants. You authorized those 320 million based on revenue forecasts that were really pure fantasy. Today, it's being investigated whether that money was used to clean up the owner's personal accounts rather than to save jobs. Why? Why did you finance 320 million euros for a private merger of 2 tourism giants?
I'll answer right away, excuse me, because you're putting the responsibility for authorizing these operations on me, and I don't authorize them.
The authorities. But you gave the go-ahead to escalate it, right?
No, I didn't give the go-ahead for that, so...
Within your team, who was the one who gave the go-ahead? No.
No, the go-ahead didn't come from my team. There were reports from the external advisor, the financial advisor, and the legal advisor, the declaration of the company's strategic nature. And with that documentation, the management board was the one that authorized and decided whether it was approved.
You passed the operation to the management board, didn't you?
Well, all right.
But okay, but only if you had validated it.
Beforehand, I didn't issue any reports or sign any kind of validation for the operations.
And neither did your team.
And neither did my team.
So what are you all good for then?
to coordinate the analysis of the requests, to ensure the reports existed and were submitted to the management board.
So you didn't review any documents? Of course we did. We reviewed them. I'm getting there.
But the fact that you review a document doesn't mean we have the authority to approve the operation. That wasn't our role.
Did you receive calls or messages from Coldo urging you to prioritize this file over others that had been waiting?
It's been 24 minutes, Ms. Gomez. I'm almost done, Your Honor. Well, we're keeping track here, too. Thank you.
Did you receive calls or messages from Coldo urging you to prioritize this file over others? No, nothing. What contact did you have with those fixers, the fixers who were always there for SEPI, so that this company could pass the filter?
I don't know any fixer.
None? This file has a common denominator along with those 4 you said went through your office, and it's practically your approval. In this context of legal pressure, SEPI awarded a civil liability insurance policy in November 2025 with a limited retroactivity clause, a safeguard for the management team, including yourself, by guaranteeing legal and financial coverage against claims for decisions made in the past. Was there urgency in contracting this insurance? And in addition, it coincided with the civil guard searches at the public holding company's offices, a preventive step due to ongoing judicial investigations into embezzlement and official misconduct. Considering that you were the direct technical person responsible for validating files such as Plus Ultra and Air Europa, did the unlimited retroactivity clause serve as a direct instruction to ensure that, if it's proven you validated those reports without solid evidence, the state, not your personal assets, would cover legal fees and any compensation?
I am not familiar with the policy because since September 2022, I am no longer an employee of SEPI. I moved to SEPI, and as of April 2024, I stopped being...
This clause applies retroactively. It also includes you.
But I don't know. Well, but I don't know the policy, nor do I know...
You also don't know who the technical consultant is for these policies protecting SEPI's top officials, including yourself. I don't know him. You don't know either.
I'm not at SEPI. I have no idea.
Okay. And finally, I'm almost done. With your departure in 2022, you rescued Global Exchange for 45 million euros, and in 2024, you joined them as Chief Financial Officer. It's a textbook revolving door case that ended with your dismissal in March 2026. Why did this company hire you? First you rescue it, and then it hires you.
I don't rescue. Not at all, because I don't rescue, not because I don't.
Did the report from Global Exchange go through your hands? No. Then the information we have is not correct.
This operation, the granting of this operation, was handled by the Solvency Fund Management. A headhunter contacted me in February 2024 while I was at SEPIDIS for a selection process for a corporate director position.
Financial.
So I started the selection process with this headhunter who contacted me. I take the view that I am not subject to any kind of incompatibility since Royal Decree 451 does not establish any kind of prohibition or incompatibility for me. Also, the company had already returned the funding in 2023, and as I said, the operation was handled by the management of the... Lastly,
Mr. Partarroyo, do you think your name will come up when the judge lifts the seal on the SEPI case? No. Are you calm? Yes. Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gomez. Ms. Caballero has the floor for 25 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, Mr. Miguel Ángel Pérez. Well, you have already answered many of the questions, but even so, I might repeat myself on some of them. I wanted to press you further about your relationship with Vicente Fernandez because you have been with SEPI for a long time, and in addition, you were president. Thank you.
no, I was not president.
You were never president? What, me?
No.
He never was. He was only from SEPI, from the... No, okay. No, well, I'm glad because I heard...
I was director of subsidiaries from 2012 to 2022.
It reached me. In just 2 years, he already had president on his resume, and no.
From 2012 to 2022, sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. From 2012 to 2022, director of subsidiaries. Okay. In 2015 and 2016, I was director general. When I joined the government, I stayed on as director of subsidiaries until I became general director again.
So that's my conclusion. Okay, good. But, well, you were someone who was close to Mr. Fernandez, right?
I was one of several management committee members, including 4 subsidiary directors and others. However, I always reported directly to SEPI's vice president.
Did you understand that the presidency of SEPI could remain vacant for so long after Mr. Fernandez left?
I mean, it wasn't up to me to determine whether that was the case. No.
But do you think his absence affected SEPI's day-to-day operations or not?
I reported directly to the vice president, and the vice president was performing the duties of the president.
So you would report directly and send everything to the vice president, who was also the chairman of the management board, right? Yes. You said that you never went, so did you ever meet with Mr. Fernandez after Mr. Fernandez was dismissed? No. Never.
I mean, I had a brief courtesy exchange, but nothing more.
And the courtesy contact, more or less, when did it end? When was the last time you spoke with Mr. Fernandez? Yes.
About 5 years ago, at least. Okay.
Well, you've already told us about the companies you were involved with in the bailouts. We've already talked a lot about Europa, and we've also talked about Plus Ultra, but I would like you to clarify a few things for us. So actually, who made the final decisions for you at SEPI regarding the bailouts?
The management board was responsible for approving operations and submitting them to the Council of Ministers for approval.
Ultimately, but in the end, the vice president was the chair of the management board. Those who were inside, you said that some of them, you gathered reports, but without signatures, right?
No, I mean, the reports that were submitted to the management board for approval of the operations were signed.
Were they signed? Were those your conclusions? And is that where you... No, I didn't participate? No.
I didn't draft the conclusions submitted to the management board on the operations I was involved in. They were the reports either from SEPI's internal departments or in some cases from independent external advisors, legal or financial. And based on that, the management board approved the operations, which were fully documented because there were even meetings with the teams of the advisory members, of the board of directors, of the management board to explain the operations.
Did you ever have a meeting with agents outside of SEPI for any bailout? No. You already said that you didn't question, nor did you consider whether Plus Ultra was strategic or not. It was simply accepted, and that's it.
It wasn't my authority to assess that aspect, to judge the status of an entire company in this context.
But I would like you to clarify for us, because it's true that today this information came out that they were insisting that Arroyo conveyed internally that there was pressure to speed up the operation from the circle of José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. You have never told anyone that there was pressure from this circle? Any political pressure? No.
No, I'm not involved in politics and haven't faced any outside pressure.
It doesn't matter. There are many ways, and we see how these pressures work. Mr. Rodríguez Zapata doesn't need to call you, nor have I been pressured by Zapatero.
What interest?
Or a boss could say, we're very interested in this rescue. Let's see if you can get it done soon. No.
I haven't received any kind of pressure.
Never. Totally normal treatment. Thank you. So you will deny what they have said, right? Sorry. This report that appeared in a media outlet, It may need to be corrected, just like you have corrected other matters that affect you personally.
I haven't had time yet to analyze the news in depth.
It says that in this rescue, the man's name comes up frequently, that he was one of the operational leaders. That part must be true. That's what the news says.
I can explain to you what my responsibilities were at SEPI if you want, but I'm not going to comment on something a news report says that doesn't match reality or that I don't know where it comes from.
And it also says, and they've told you, and I was quite interested in this, about whether there were some SEPI officials who supposedly protected themselves regarding the inappropriateness of rescuing Plus Ultra and who didn't sign the reports. They put it in writing?
I insist. I've mentioned this before.
To a colleague, to the senator. Okay. Well, we'll get to know him, because since this topic seems like it's going to continue for a while, he has also spoken, well, I don't know, of course, since he's outside, maybe he hasn't even been questioned, but logically, as you can see, I imagine it's almost like your own doing. About the news that came out this Christmas, that the extension of the Plus Ultra and Air Europa rescues had to be approved at the last minute. Did it seem strange to you?
Sorry.
I don't know what that is. The deadline to repay the loans has been extended. I think it was this Christmas for Plus Ultra and for Air Europa.
For Air Europa, I think it's already...
That it had been returned. It had already been returned. And Plus Ultra?
The thing is, I don't know about the deadline extensions because since 2022, I'm not even at SEPI.
You don't even follow the news, even though you know?
I follow the news like everyone else. I've been involved in these topics and do follow, but not closely.
But since it's from SEPI, does it seem strange to you? Or is it a common practice for these kinds of things, for extensions to happen? When a deadline was set?
Like any loan, there are negotiations, I suppose, to extend them. The grace periods, I don't know. The grace periods are the duration of the contracts. It's just that I don't know. I really don't know about the subject.
One of the things you've been criticized for, and it seems like it really did bother you, because you wrote that complaint letter, it's about accusing you of engaging in revolving door practices. Like, you had participated in the bailout of a company and then went there when you say you hadn't participated in the bailout, right? But nevertheless, Evo Evost in the end is a company that was indeed bailed out by the organization you are part of. You are part of. Did you bring this up with the Office of Conflicts of Interest to see if there was any incompatibility? Or did you understand, as I mentioned before?
I repeat, I did not have the status of a high-ranking official. I had a senior management contract subject to Royal Decree 451. I was not subject to any conflict of interest restrictions. The company had already repaid the financing. In addition, the selection process was carried out through a renowned headhunter, and that operation was managed by the phase management. So also, I didn't perfect. I wasn't in a political role, so this can't really be called a revolving door. I had a technical position at SEPI, so I don't see anything more to it.
And why did you leave this company then, which they're also holding against you? Could it have had anything to do with the fact that the company saw there were some investigations and didn't want its name to be tarnished? I don't know.
I left Global Exchange at the end on the last day of February. They told me in mid-November that they wanted to replace me and that they were going to turn the position over to a headhunter. And it was part of a process of reorganizing the management team, where more executives and more people from the company have left. And so as part of that, well, I ended up leaving.
It seems normal to you. All right. At SEPI, going back to SEPI, well, here too, when the president came, we asked her why she had removed the Planning and Control Department. Do you think it played an important role, or?
I've always thought that SEPI's Planning and Control Department was one of SEPI's pillars, because there was an experienced team that had been there a long time. And they were always the ones who, for me, added the most value in SEPI. And the elimination meant that the directors were assigned to the directorates overseeing subsidiaries. They assigned Francisco Salvador to me as a director within SEPI, within my directorate, because I was already in charge of Correos and other entities. And, well, what we were told was that it was for reasons of efficiency.
Right, but well, you, in part, at first, honestly, I didn't agree with it.
Well, yes, it's an organization that works and it's useful.
They didn't ask me if I had to
Share it or not.
go. They for sure didn't ask her. But I mean, in the end, it's a body that's being questioned. Why exactly? When it's such a sensitive issue, oversight bodies are usually necessary, especially in this kind of company, right? Do you remember whether Manuel Alves raised objections in any of these bailouts?
In practically almost all the operations, well, I don't remember about the Alcusa one, but in the Plus Ultra and Europa operations. And in Alvarez, the person who was in the operation, it wasn't directly Manuel Alves, even though he was the main director of the department, but rather one of his directors was there. In the analysis of the operations. No, I don't recall Manuel Alves directly bringing up anything. I don't remember Manuel Alves directly raising any...
Well, so you could say, I mean, do you think that internal controls over subsequent bailouts have been reduced once this department was removed?
It's just that later the operations of the Solvency Fund, practically most of them came to depend on the management of the phase department. The phase department analyzed operations, and the work team was formed from staff already assigned to that department. As for the operations I wasn't involved in, especially the last ones, I don't know what the procedures were or the involvement of other people. But obviously, since May 2021, the planning department had already disappeared.
Actually, well, one of the first measures that Belengualda took after her appointment was to request external reports before granting bailouts. Yes, did she request more external reports, or was it already a common practice to always request external reports?
In the operations of the Asuncion Fund, I think the practice of using external advisors' reports continued. Just like the operations already had an advisor, there was the framework agreement for a financial advisor and an independent legal advisor, which, as far as I know, was used to validate compliance with the eligibility criteria and continued that way.
So, in reality, there wouldn't be any staff as SEPI prepared to make the reports?
No, it's not that there wasn't qualified staff, it's that we had our own roles as investee company directors, and we were given the additional task of carrying out all this enormous amount of work. So imagine the amount of work we had for a long time, and that's why specific staff were later hired, a specific department was created, and we relied on reports from external advisors.
Speaking of which, these reports would arrive and we would work directly on the draft they issued. That wasn't clear to me. It's been said they made a draft, and no, the mention
I answered earlier regarding the drafts is that it would be submitted to the Management Council in certain cases. In certain cases, they wanted information in the Management Council about the status of the operations. So, with the drafts that existed at that time, with the progress that had been made in the operation, they were submitted to the Management Council to inform the Management Council about the status of the operation and how the analysis of the operation was progressing.
And sometimes the Management Council would say the direction the draft should take, what conclusion it should reach.
I have no knowledge that in any case the Management Council,
I don't think there has ever been any.
The operations that I managed.
Well, the ones you were involved in are, let's say, the ones under the most suspicion and are being analyzed the most for possible political interference, precisely.
I don't know of any political interference in these. In mine.
Okay. So, you haven't had to make any decision that you didn't technically agree with?
It's just that I haven't made any technical decisions because my role was coordination. I didn't have decision-making authority.
And you have almost preferred not to have decision-making authority, or to say, of course, I had
the tasks that were assigned to me. No, I'm not going to say whether I would have wanted more or less right now.
Well, right now, given the situation, I guess it's better to just coordinate, right? Just in case. The Instituto de Empresa that we mentioned, that Senator Suarez mentioned earlier, they talked about it. It wasn't clear to me. Actually, it's almost clear to me that it's not. They said, the Institute says they didn't get their rents reduced. But there is actually some pretty detailed information in a media outlet that says they went from 23 euros per square meter to 4 euros per square meter. 500,000 a year, and they're talking, no, yes, 500,000, that's it. 5 million a year, that's what they were talking about. I was left with the impression, after you talked about the 5 million loan, yes, I got the feeling that, well, you are certain that this was reduced, that the rent was not reduced. Thank you.
I mentioned it before, I don't have any knowledge of whether the reduction happened. It would seem, quite strange, quite unheard of to me if that reduction had happened, because, in a public company, for a reduction of that magnitude to be made seems unheard of to me. No, it seems unheard of to me that it actually happened, that it could have happened, but I don't know. And secondly, what I do know is that a loan of 5 million euros was made to the Instituto de Empresa.
Okay, and this loan, do you know if it has been paid back?
I think so, that yes, it was paid back. Thank you.
Se devolvió. Did you know about Begoña Gomez's relationship with the Instituto de Empresa at the time? No, just what I saw firsthand.
What has
come out now? Okay, well, for my part, I'm not going to ask you anything else because you're not going to add much more after what you've said. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caballero. Mr. Franco Pardo from the Socialist Parliamentary Group has the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Franco.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Party Arroyo, first of all, I would like you to give us a summary of your academic and professional background.
Well, I have a law degree from the University of Salamanca. I spent several years preparing for the judicial and prosecutorial career exams. Then I left it due to the passing of my father. I moved to Madrid to do the legal advisory masters at the Instituto de Empresa. Afterwards, I spent 7.5 years, almost 8, in different law firms at KPMG, at Monica Hall, Burt, etc. Then, in 2012, I joined SEPI as Director of Portfolio Companies, and I stayed there until 2022. In addition, I was SEPI's Director General as well as Director of Portfolio Companies during the years 2015 to 2016. In 2018, with the change of government, they kept me as Director of Portfolio Companies. Later, in September 2022, I was transferred to SEPIDES as the Strategy Director of SEPIDES. At the end of 2012, they fired the Corporate Director and also gave me the position of Corporate and Strategy Director. In April 2024, I voluntarily left SEPI and became Corporate Finance Director at Grupo Global Exchange. And in March 2026, I left Global Exchange, and now, well, I am actively looking for a job.
He is a person. Yes,
Yes, he is a person. Let's see.
thank you.
No, Mr. Franco, we couldn't hear you earlier. Things are just a bit odd right now. Please try again. Thank you.
Now it's working. Now both are on. Can you hear me well now? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. Don't worry, Madam President. I'll have plenty of time. Thank you. I was saying that, well, it's clear that you are a perfectly qualified person to carry out the work you have done at SEPI during these years, during these 10 years. I would also like to know if your departure from SEPI had anything to do with the appointment of Ms. Gualda as president.
No, well, right, Ms. Gualda. She was appointed president of SEPI in March 2021, and I stayed at SEPI until September 2022. And in September 2022, I moved to SEPIDES until I left in 2024.
After listening to you and after listening to the other witnesses who have appeared before this commission, I am even more convinced that this commission was created. Basically because in a few days, on May 17th, there are elections in Andalusia, and the idea was to look for some link to, let's say, shady matters involving candidate Maria Jesus Montero, who was, as we all know, Vice President of the government and Minister of Finance. To look for some link to certain matters, let's call them shady or allegedly criminal, that may have occurred in SEPI. I think the Popular Party parliamentary group's argument, or rather its intention, is collapsing under its own weight. Surely, as I said, this commission would not have been formed if elections were not being held next weekend. And also, I have to say that, given what we've seen, I have the feeling that the conclusions of this commission, as has been shown with others, have already been written by the Popular Parliamentary Group. So, I have a feeling that this is a waste of time, although, of course, I respect the rules of this chamber and I respect the majority of the Popular Party in the Senate to create investigative commissions. As it should be. No disrespect. But I also have the feeling that the Popular Parliamentary Group is not achieving its objectives. And I am also certain now that in this attempt to discredit certain people who are connected to socialist governments, well, it seems frank.
Mr. Franco, let's see. Mr. Franco, you know better than anyone. As a member of the board, I have already given you 5 minutes to make the introduction that you considered appropriate, which is completely outside the purpose of this commission. And you know that we discussed this at the board meeting precisely, that all the parliamentary groups, although I understand that some need more time to give other kinds of explanations because they are not going to ask questions. But you have already had the appropriate amount of time. Are you going to ask any questions regarding SEPI, please?
Yes, well, I am not obligated to ask questions. I can make comments, right, Madam President? Of course, without going off topic. Don't worry, I won't go off topic, or at least I'll try not to. Maybe at a certain moment I might go off on a tangent, but I will come back to the point. I don't know. Don't worry, Madam President. All right, first of all, here there was an attempt to confuse bailouts with loans. What Air Europa and Plus Ultra received is known as a loan. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. And Mr. Partido de Arroyo, you can confirm for me that those loans helped save many jobs. Is that right or not? Yes, of course, that's right. Perfect. So now we already have a coherent reason and a logical reason for ASEP to grant those loans. But as I said, people here spoke far too lightly about this, and I'm very surprised, especially by the members of the Partido Popular, whom I respect and value. That mistakes have been made, like, for example, confusing a senior management position in the public sector with a high-level public office. When we know, and you have said it today as well, that a senior management position isn't subject to any post-employment restrictions and can join any company the very next day after leaving, right? Whereas holding a high-level public office does come with 2 years of post-employment restrictions. Well, in this case, there was a mix-up, I imagine not intentionally. I assume good intentions on the part of the members of the Popular Party. And your name was also mixed up, Mr. Parterolo. You are Jose Angel Parterolo. Well, one day here they called you Javier, and another day they called you Juan Manuel. That speaks volumes about the rigor with which this commission is being conducted. And I repeat what I said. Here we talk about revolving doors. We talk about topics that have nothing to do with the ultimate purpose of this commission. What this is about is undermining the reputation of the former Minister of Finance. That's what this is about. But since they can't achieve it, this obviously leads to frustration. Although it must also be said that the Popular Party has been living in a state of constant frustration since 2023, when the ministries had already been distributed and then Pedro Sánchez ended up governing as he still does. That's how parliamentary democracy works, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing more, Madam President, because I might make the mistake of slipping up and turning green.
Almost there.
Almost there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Franco. I want to remind you, based on your argument, that you know, as a member of the board, that next week, once the Andalusian elections are over, on the 20th and 21st, there will be hearings. Okay?
So anyway.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Yes, well, it's because of the relationship we have as members of the board. Thank you very much, Mr. Franco. Mr. Party Arroyo, you have the floor if you would like to make any comments or statements for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I think with everything I've already explained, I don't think it's necessary for me to add anything else. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Party Arroyo. Well, let's begin with the spokesperson's turn. Ms. Caballero, don't you want to take the floor? Mr. Franco, would you like to speak?
Yes, simply over a matter that is far from minor. Here, attempts are being made to link SEPI's actions and loans to Begoña Gómez. Time will prove that Begoña Gómez is a decent and honorable person, nothing more.
Thank you, Mr. Franco. Mr. Suarez, you have the floor.
Go ahead. Thank you, Madam President. And given the brevity of those who spoke before me, I will try to be brief. I believe that holding this hearing has been crucial since it has made some issues clear. The first and most important is that the former minister, Ms. Montero, the current president of SEPI, Ms. Gualda, and the vice president, Mr. Lora, lied. That the claim that all the files had a positive report that they validated the viability plan, in other words, that the eligibility requirements were met, that was not true. It has become perfectly clear to us that those internal reports, which all three repeatedly insisted existed, were not actually prepared. It has become clear to us that Mr. Party Arroyo was not informed about the memos issued by those departments, which clearly questioned the aid to Plus Ultra. It has become crystal clear to us regarding Mr. Lora. And what about what he emphasized regarding his four eyes theory, referring to the existence of four reports? And that made it very difficult for SEPI to make a mistake, which wasn't true. And regarding the statement made by Mr. Party Arroyo that they only analyzed the audit presented by Plus Ultra, I have to tell you that this audit, which was obviously self-serving, had three problems. It failed to comply with international standard on auditing 250 because it omitted investigating the transactional operations and transactions I have mentioned. About that money laundering of more than 1.5 million and the participating loan. It failed to comply with international standard on auditing 500 because the company's viability was simply based on internal expectations, ignoring internal risk. What's more, in that audit report, he even acknowledges that there was a risk of bankruptcy. It has also become clear to us regarding the rent reduction for the building that the Instituto de Empresa had. Mr. Party Arroyo, who was actually the one who should have known about that information, was not informed. And regarding the matter of the days of leave, it has also become clear to us that it was none other than the SEPI Management Committee who authorized the hiring, and that the elimination of the Planning Directorate was especially serious because of the control it exercised. You, I believe, Mr. Party Arroyo, have hinted at some point, haven't you? Something like why that directorate was eliminated, or has someone asked you about it? Well, look, I'm going to give you a hint. Think about the fact that Ms. Gualda was at Avantia and that someone dared to question her management from that Directorate General for Planning. And that maybe was, perhaps, maybe I say it, a small or big vendetta. Very well, ladies and gentlemen, I have reached this point, and so as not to bore you any further, this is as far as I'll go. I thank you again, Mr. Party Arroyo, for appearing today, and thank you very much, and that's all, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suarez Lamata, and we conclude this session. Thank you.
What?